People have called me transphobic and people have told me that he could have been hiding it. I've actually been told to accept it because this is why he abused me because he wanted to be female. That to me is a big insult to the transgender community because I know many transgender people who have never abused children. For me, I was abused by this man for my childhood, and I know full well that he is so masculine and so controlling and so narcissistic. There's no way he would have ever wanted to be female. He used to mock people. I remember the Jimmy Savile news story coming out and him saying he couldn't believe that people like him exist. And I just sat there as a child thinking, you're one of them. Obviously, it depends how long it takes and how many other paedophiles now, carry on changing their name. What happens to those who have already done it? So, for instance, my father. There's a lot of questions, but this is the first step, I think.
Do you think there is a problem with people trying it on? That people are sort of using, because there are people out there who change their gender because of deep-seated things that have lived with them all their lives. And yet there's a
Mhm.
feeling that there are people who, when they're involved in the criminal justice system, they see it as another thing to try on. They're going to change their name, change their gender because it's something they can do to try and sort of slip out of the system. Do you think that is a genuine problem?
So I was actually told by a very reputable source that solicitors are actually advising it. So my father's solicitor actually advised him to change his gender because he would get segregation rights and also cost so much more money to keep in prison. So the likelihood of parole would obviously increase from that as well. Plus, he gets to hide. Well, he thought he could, but obviously, I've made sure that didn't happen.
So you think it's people trying to, they've done something infamous that should be public knowledge, they should be on this register, and it's a way of escaping the shadow of their past?
Absolutely. I've actually spoken to a lady who lives in the same block of flats as my father now, and she's been exploited by him already in terms of it. She's lent him money, he's acted the victim, he's told her he, has never done anything and he's always wanted to live in this body. Really, it's just an escape from the person he is. And, he is walking around now with the parts that he still used to abuse me as an innocent child, just saying that he's female, and that's a really big concern. He's still got that weapon,
And he
ultimately.
and you ultimately don't believe he believes that. He doesn't believe he's female. He's just using it as a thing.
People have called me transphobic and people have told me that he could have been hiding it. I've actually been told to accept it because this is why he abused me because he wanted to be female. That to me is a big insult to the transgender community because I know many transgender people who have never abused children. For me, I was abused by this man for my childhood, and I know full well that he is so masculine and so controlling and so narcissistic. There's no way he would have ever wanted to be female. He used to mock people. I remember the Jimmy Savile news story coming out and him saying he couldn't believe that people like him exist. And I just sat there as a child thinking, you're one of them. And this is how manipulative he is. And he's now manipulating another vulnerable group in society.
And actually, the law should stop him doing that, which is what Suella Braverman wants to do. I'm also struck by the fact that at the minute, registered sex offenders are required to notify their local police force within 3 days of changing their name. Ultimately, do you think this will stop them even trying it? I mean, that's the point, is that if the onus is on them to report and then people to check them, people will just slip away out of the system. If it's a ban, are you confident that it will be enforced properly?
That's what I'm hoping. Obviously, it's just been announced today, and there's a lot of work to be done behind the scenes by people in Parliament to make sure that this is done and it's done properly. The reason we're in this situation is because laws were enforced and weren't done properly. So now we need to make sure that loopholes are avoided as much as possible. And like you say, of course, this is going to mean that people hopefully then won't be able to escape and not notify people that they're changing their names.
Do you think, just finally, do you think you've become part of a culture war that you don't want to be part of? Because you mentioned, and we talked about this earlier with Kezia Dugdale, that there is an issue around transgender people with genuine concerns who need to be supported. And then there's a whole big culture war that exists. And then there are examples of clear abuse where people are either feigning symptoms or pretending to be something they're not because they want to achieve something for themselves. And you want to protest against that. You've protested very clearly. Do you mind that you'll be caught by this notion of the whole culture war? Is that actually helpful to you or unhelpful, I presume?
So when I set out to campaign against this, that was one thing I was is severely afraid of. I know what it's like to live with a secret as a child and to then feel you have to come out as an adult and let down your guard and you'll show your vulnerabilities, maybe in a different way. But I definitely know what it's like to live with that. For me, I've been labeled transphobic and that really hurts. But if that means that this changes things and that another child, my neighbour's child, my cousins, my sisters aren't going to be abused, then that's what I have to sacrifice for that.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning, Ceri-Lee. Thank you.